Illegals are so emboldened, so shameless, so protected, coddled, and comforted by this sham administration, they are now making a literal run on our border. It's time for Final Thoughts. Well, folks, take it all in. Illegals are now quite literally bum rushing our border in the hundreds. This massive group bombarded Mexican authorities on the other side of the border before stampeding their way to the Paso del Norte bridge in El Paso. This footage was provided to our own Bill Malugin, one of the only reporters who actually gives a damn. While the Hollywood elites were strutting their happy asses down the champagne carpet at the Oscars, and while other so-called journalists stood by to gush and ask pointless and inconsequential questions, Fox News and Bill Malugin cared to cover the literal invasion at our southern border. You know, it's bad enough illegals are allowed to stroll in here, and now, go figure, they are so entitled, lawless, and emboldened, they won't even wait to be escorted in. They'd rather forcefully enter this country and do it without a shred of integrity or respect for this country they will now, thanks to Joe, call home. And our poor CBP officers. They've been left out to dry by Joe, and I can't even begin to fathom how utterly sickening it must be for them to watch the country they swore an oath to defend be invaded, and invaded so brazenly and shamelessly. We all know the moment they use any force or measure to prevent this large-scale stampede, they will be the ones sidelined, investigated, and demonized endlessly. This is such a crock of crap. What you allow continues, and the Democrats have made it crystal clear to the rest of the world: come one, come all, and do it with zero, zippo, zilch regard for laws or the sovereignty of our nation. And you know what's worse? Half or more of this country doesn't even give a damn. You know what's going on at the border? You know how much it's costing each and every one of us, over $180 billion a year or more, and some of you just don't care because you don't think it impacts you. Well, brace yourselves, because it's all about to come home to roost, and roost right in your backyard. You think the run on the bank was bad? Take a look at the run on our border. 2 years into this administration, we've already allowed millions in. Does anyone really think these people are going to stop coming? I've said it before and I'll repeat it. Every person in every crap hole country around the world will be en route within the next 2 years, and they'll pay the criminal organizations that are killing our people to do it. These people aren't coming here to earn the American dream. They're coming here to forcefully take it. We are a nation of immigrants, but we used to be a nation of laws. Under the Democrats, we went from peace through strength to the doormat for the rest of the world to walk on. Oh, but I'm sure some film no one has ever actually seen won Best Picture or something last night, so yay, bury your little heads back in the sand another day. American taxpayers are shelling out at least $182 billion per year on illegal immigration, and the blank checks keep coming. According to the Federation for American Immigration Reform, illegal immigration costs American taxpayers at least $182 billion a year. That means each taxpayer has a bill for roughly $1,100 on our tab. This cost is incurred by the nearly 16 million illegal immigrants on the books and the 5.4 million children of illegal immigrants we also support. And I don't want to hear the nonsense about illegals paying taxes, because analysis shows they contribute around $32 billion, but cost us over $150 billion more than that. So I hope you're feeling generous, Americans, because with this administration, the teat for the people who have no legal right to be here will never dry up. Join me now with more of the dollars and senselessness of it all is the Federation for American Immigration Reform President, Dan Stein. Dan, it's great to have you. I wish it was under better circumstances than talking about how much money illegal immigrants are sucking off of us.
Well, yeah, there are a couple of important points about this study. Not only does it include enormous costs for education, often for children brought here illegally or that they have after they get here, but also because the Biden administration is now trying to parole in aliens, which actually gives them benefits under federal law they would not get if they just entered without inspection. The costs that are going to be skyrocketing even more the next 2 years under the Biden administration's policies. So while Biden may try to come up with different schemes to hide the flow by flying people in at night through parole and things like that, the actual cost, the velocity of the increase in the cost is going to dramatically increase, even beyond what we've seen for the first 2 years of the Biden administration. These are billions and billions and billions of dollars that could be applied to educating America's poorest children, most vulnerable, the kids who really need the kind of decent education to compete in the superpower post-industrial information society. And yet Biden is letting in millions of people who are going to be here for years, waiting for a claim that it's probably going to fail anyway. Meantime, it's the states, the cities, they're the ones who are picking up most of the tab. And that's what's really frustrating about this, Tommy. You have the federal government, the Biden administration, basically destroying border control, entry controls, intentionally sabotaging things that were working, and then putting it on the state and local taxpayers when the state and localities are limited constitutionally in what they can do to stop the problem.
Right. Well, you're right. And there have been several governors who have stepped up and tried to do something. I mean, in Arizona, they said that they couldn't even put shipping containers to protect their border. We know that Governor Abbott in Texas has sent the National Guard, done everything that he possibly can. But I think understanding how much this is costing is so important. And I'm so glad that there's a study. And I'm so glad that your organization is putting this out there for people to understand that when illegal comes over here, they get their health care, as you mentioned, the education, they get food assistance, they use our city services, our law enforcement, our infrastructure. All of these things are on our tab. And that's not to even mention places like New York City, who are putting illegal immigrants up in 4- or 5-star hotel accommodations and then giving them bicycles and everything else that they could possibly desire, room service. I mean, the tab is running up here, especially in those states and those places that are sanctuaries already. But we're still paying for all of this. And I wonder how long it's going to take for the average American to see the burden that this is causing. Will they ever see it, or will it be so hidden under the radar?
Well, the average American understands, and people are appalled at what's going on, and they're disgusted at paying for billions of dollars for people with no right to be in the country, particularly when Americans now are struggling to make ends meet and pay for groceries. And now Eric Adams wants to provide college, not only luxury hotels, but college for those here on parole or people waiting for an asylum hearing. I mean, the public has made it clear, but Biden and his administration are so ideologically committed to, I guess they're trying to re-engineer the electorate. They think that a mass amnesty program, which is really what Biden is saying, either Congress passes a mass amnesty program or you'll leave the borders wide open. Well, you pass a mass amnesty program, suddenly you got 15 million more voters, and many of them will probably vote Democrat because they want transfer payments, they want the freebies. And so the net result is the Democrats are playing a long game here of trying to re-engineer the electorate to achieve one-party political control. And the taxpayers are left holding the bag for this, what is frankly this slide toward mediocrity that the country is dealing with. And it doesn't, it shouldn't be a partisan issue in this way. We can all agree that the rule of law is what matters, illegal is illegal, and that respect for law is the cornerstone of citizenship. Now, Democrats in particular want to give voting rights to non-citizens, illegal aliens in places like New York and Washington, D.C., and who knows where that's going to end.
Yeah, and you also brought up something that I think is so important for Americans to really understand as well, and that is the burden that comes with these children of illegal immigrants. Because yes, they are born on American soil. We let their illegal parents in here. They had 1, 2, 3 kids by the time they have their court date, and now those kids are now part of our system, and they're receiving benefits as well. Their illegal parents by proxy are receiving these benefits. So this is a whole system that we've created, and it's really limitless. It's really endless, because as long as people continue to have children, you still have the stress on the system. And this is a controversial point I've been speaking about for years, but when we have an open border like this, what we're essentially doing is we're importing poverty. And we don't need to import poverty at this time in our nation right now with inflation the way that it is. I mean, we've already got a run on banks. We've already got financial issues and on the brink of collapse in some ways. We were in a technical recession a few months back, but now we're in a position where we're just importing more poverty and people that we're going to have to take care of. Do you think that this is fixable with a new administration? Or has this been dug so deep a grave that it's going to take generations to dig out of?
It's going to take a cooperative Congress working with a sympathetic administration. And, we often have these divides between the business community within the Republican Party that sees this thing as cheap labor. And the canary in the coal mine is the fact that with millions and millions of people pouring across our borders, you still have some businesses saying, we have a labor shortage, we need to bring in more foreign labor. Now, why are they saying that? Well, 2 reasons. One is the immigrants who are pouring across the border don't have the skills needed in a post-industrial information society job market. The second reason is because our schools are so overburdened and overcrowded, along with things like politically correct ideology and everything else, We're not teaching our young people and preparing them for the kind of jobs that our society will be and is creating tomorrow. So you're getting it on both angles. Can you fix it? Well, you're going to need the kind of strong leadership from people who served in the Trump administration with whatever the next administration is, and they're going to have a clear majority in Congress with the willingness to overcome the Republicans who just look at this thing as cheap labor. People like Tillis, I don't name all the names.
Yeah, Lindsey Graham with his amnesty bill. I mean, we know the rhinos that have been pushing this through, and you're exactly right. It's because their interests like the cheap labor. So we need to hold them accountable, because I never want people to forget when we had control of everything. We had Donald Trump in the White House. We had Congress. Republicans sat there for 2 years and did nothing. Donald Trump had to threaten to shut down the government in order to get money to build his wall so that we could protect this nation. And there were a lot of Republicans that were not on board. So simply having an R behind your name means nothing if you're not dedicated to border security. The last thing I want to talk about, though, is Mexico itself, because we've already got Texas saying, hey, probably avoid Mexico if you're going to spring break. I'm somebody who had a friend of mine go over to Mexico for a 30th birthday party and never came home, stabbed to death in a nice resort. We've got the recent kidnappings and murders. What can you tell folks about not only the immigration problem, but the dangers for Americans in Mexico right now?
Well, we are a country that's willing to spend billions and billions of dollars to defend every square inch of the Ukraine. At the same time, we've allowed along our borders essentially a knife at our throats. These cartels have now corrupted the Mexican government, taken over whole swaths of south of our border, and now have penetrated throughout the interior of the United States. And it's not just a matter of being unsafe in Mexico. These cartels are now operating all over our country as well. And the fact is, when you have someone like AMLO, the current president of Mexico, making outrageous lying claims that they don't produce any fentanyl and they're not responsible for these sorts of things, he knows full well that by coddling up to the cartels, he's allowed them to run roughshod all over the rule of law, probably 150 miles south of our southern border. It's very dangerous. If you get off certain beaten paths, your safety can't be guaranteed. All these cartels have to do is decide you're actually an opposing gang member, no matter why you're there, and the next thing you know, you're dead. And this is like really 2 miles within the United States border. How can this be tolerated? So somewhere along the way, well, Donald Trump had the right idea. He leveraged our trade relations to insist on cooperation from Mexico. As long as the Democrats continue to coddle Mexico, tell them this is okay, and be tolerant of the cartels coming in, we're losing control of a swath of our country.
Threaten tariffs, as Donald Trump did, and implement Remain in Mexico, because guess what? The Mexican people, they don't want the world's people, the world's migrants, setting up shop in their country either. That's why they usher them right on through to the USA. So bring back Remain in Mexico, threaten a tariff on Mexico. That's a good start. Designate these cartels as terrorist organizations, which the Democrats, for some reason, are hesitant to do. It's coddling everything. It's coddling lawlessness, whether it's within our borders, right outside of our borders, at our border. Lawlessness, $180 billion a year. Oh, Dan, I appreciate you guys doing this study, for waking up the American people. Let's just hope that they listen and they're ready to vote on it in 2024.
Thank you, Tommy.